History made as Florida LGBTQ+ caucus elects trans man as president and trans woman as vice president to fight DeSantis. Already this year, the greatest number of anti-LGBTQ+ laws in history have been introduced in Florida and across the USA. Widely understood, these culture war opportunities are for radical conservatives and evangelicals to win elections at the expense of our LGBTQ+ children, drag queens, and more. But the top attacks are reserved for the trans community. The most marginalized are always the most defenseless. All the more reason to celebrate what Florida LGBTQ+ Democratic Caucus did this week. They are the largest queer political activist grassroots organization in Florida with more than 20 chapters across the state. President Stephen Gaskell turned the reins over to the newly elected President Nathan Brummer and Vice President Kristen Browdy. The historic nature of this new leadership is that Brummer is a trans man and Browdy is a trans woman. The membership of the Florida LGBTQ+ Democratic Caucus will have 2 trans community leaders to take on Governor DeSantis and the radical agenda of the GOP. Brummer is a well-known activist that served as LGBTQ+ state advocate under Commissioner Nikki Fried. Browdy is the past chair of the National Trans Bar Association.
In the past week, there have been 17 arrests or convictions of adults accused of having sex with children. Of those 17, 14 were pastors or youth pastors at Christian churches. One was the husband of a youth pastor. One, a police officer. None were drag queens.
They are both attorneys and now face the work to encourage LGBTQ+ Florida to face the presidential and national elections next year. And next year is the key. Like I spoke earlier, DeSantis is going to continue to run roughshod and do whatever he wants this year. We can stand up, we can shout, we can sit here and talk about it all we want, but he gets to do whatever he wants. Democrats have zero power in the legislature. Their first job is to help recruit candidates, gay, straight, whatever, allies, we need them, for the state house to try and at least wrest some power back from Republicans. After that, maybe they can get rid of Rick Scott. He's vulnerable as a first-term senator. But their main job is to get us to the polls. You've said it so much leading up to the elections last year, Al. We have to come out and vote. That's priority number one. After that, we can get all the candidates we need and everything else. But first, we have to make people aware. And it's going to get much, much worse before it ever gets better. So please start listening to them. I talked with Nathan yesterday. He's very upbeat despite the incredibly steep uphill climb that he has to go.
Talk about powerful leadership. I had the opportunity to interact with Kristen Browdy in New York. She, in addition to being the president of the National Trans Bar Association, she was also a past president of Legal, which is the New York LGBT Bar Association. And talk about fierce, talk about a great advocate. So I'm so excited that she's moved to Florida and we have her advocacy here.
I know you were saying that there's probably not going to be a lot of national investment in Florida, but on Sunday I got to see the Victory Institute and SAVE did an event on Sunday night, a fundraiser, and the Victory Institute, of course, which helps train and encourage LGBTQ candidates to run for office. And they said, this money and the fundraising that's being done is going directly back into Florida because they need to be where they need to convert people. Yeah. And so meaning they need to go where the non-believers are and try to build grassroots organizations, people, candidates, whether it's at city, state, all the different levels of government. We need to have representation, and they're behind that. So I encourage people to go and, support the Victory Fund, support SAVE and the great work that they do along with the Florida LGBTQ Caucus.
Well, I do wish Brummer and Browdy the best of luck in their endeavors, but they really are up against truly challenging odds. And I hope they do good things.
For me, interesting, I've spent 3 days in Orlando for the conference, LGBT Democratic Caucus Conference. It was, I believe, the 5th that I had attended. I did many interviews, the most number of interviews that I've ever done at a Democratic LGBT conference. In many respects, without the stars of people like Val Demings and so many names that I could go through that I interviewed in over the years at this caucus, I have to say, over the weekend in Orlando, without any of those necessarily named stars, it was my favorite one that I visited. And the reason in covering as a news story, and the reason is because it was crystal clear to the Democrats in the room, it was crystal clear to the LGBT community and their allies in the room that they've absolutely hit bottom. They've chinned, they've skinned their chin, they've skinned their elbows, they've skinned their knees because they got crushed at midterms. Now, it's not for lack of trying, but the situation in Florida, when you move from the previous governor's election of losing by 14,000 votes to losing by 1.7 million votes or whatever it was, something dramatic happened in Florida. There was that reality in the room. One of the things that I think is really good at this moment of this story is all of the base of the hardest core of LGBT base, and I suspect the same thing is going on at the task force. I suspect the same thing is going on at HRC. I suspect the exact same thing is going on at SAVE. You've gotten the crap kicked out of you, and you're beginning to go, okay, what are we going to do different? Because if you think we're going away, that ain't happening. And the caucus says that this weekend by a membership that elects Nathan Brummer. He's, of course, well known because of Nikki Fried and being the statewide LGBT advocate. But Christine Browdy comes in, and frankly, she's a badass. And she's going to make it clear, you can knock us down, but believe me, I'm going to take out a few of your teeth as I go down. And Nathan is a more satin glove kind of approach. But the one thing that is super interesting about this story is they elect a trans man and a trans woman to lead at a time when trans is the #1 attack in America and Florida. I think
it's brilliant.
It's very encouraging, I think. Maybe you can't see it yet, but I really think that they're starting to set, and I think they're starting to set a plan. And I think the task force is there. I think HRC is there. I think SAVE is there, and other organizations of advocacy for our community. Now, if our community will just listen and follow
And vote.
And to your point, it is said that breakdowns always lead to breakthroughs. So fingers crossed to this new.
We are Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only live daily LGBTQ+ evening news show from Happening Out Television Network. In the model of PBS and NPR, we educate, inform, and entertain by supporting the 10 pillars of the LGBTQ+ community, with more than 100,000 a week watching on Roku, Apple Television, and other channels. To keep the stories going, we accept donations with 100% transparency. Stay updated and live authentically with Queer News Tonight.